All right, everyone, time for some more bug news. This comes from the Seattle Times, and it's local news because apparently the Japanese beetle has been found in multiple areas in Washington state. And this is pretty catastrophic for fruit horticulture. Japanese beetles is something I know a lot about. I worked with them for many years, and they are considered one of the very destructive pests in the United States. They've been in the country for more than 100 years. As the name suggests, they were introduced from Japan in the horticultural trade, and we have made large efforts to quarantine the beetles unsuccessfully and to prevent them from being established out west. And one of the reasons for that, especially in the Northwest, is a lot of fruit is grown in Washington state. So obviously they're famous for their apples. They're also famous for their wine. So a lot of grapes, a lot of apples, a lot of pome fruits. So like pears and plums and things like that. And these beetles, the Japanese beetles, will eat basically anything. They reproduce very quickly. They're very hard to get rid of once they become established because they spend most of their life underground. And they will just absolutely defoliate all of these fruit-bearing plants. So an enormous amount of effort has gone into the prevention of the spread of these Japanese beetles, but they have made their way there after 108 years. They finally made their way to the Northwest, and they've been found in multiple locations. Right now, it's being assumed that these infestations are just incidental. Maybe they were brought in some contaminated soil, or they flew off of a plane, something like that, because that does happen. But unfortunately, in the patterns of the past, when there is an infestation that comes in through infested soil or infested mulch, something like that, it tends to become permanently established. And because these beetles have been found in multiple locations at this point, there is a very high risk that they are actually a reproducing population in this state. And this would be extremely catastrophic. Japanese beetles, especially when they have become initially infested in an area, they go through a very high population explosion. The Northwest, particularly, it would be a great environment for them because they have very mild winters and very mild summers, because the Japanese beetles are not super tolerant of extreme cold, nor are they super tolerant of extreme heat. But they, if they are established, they will go through this population explosion and just become out of control. It will require constant pesticide application from fruit growers in the area, and it's not just fruit growers. The Japanese beetles have something between 300 and 400 hosts, frequently feeding on ornamental plants as well as agricultural plants. But they also do extensive damage to sod because the beetles reproduce underground. The female lays her eggs underground where they hatch into white grubs, and these grubs stay underground for about 10 months. They will do extensive damage to the root system of grass. So now you have the issue of the sod industry being affected because the government will quarantine that sod, and it won't be allowed to be sold either out of county or out of state, depending on what the quarantine looks like. Horticultural plants in the form of potted in soil plants will become quarantined. It's going to have huge impacts on trade in Washington state if this is established. Canada might take restrictions on things coming from Washington state across the border. It's going to be a huge, huge problem. Right now, Washington is trapping for the beetles in known areas of infestation or incidental infestation, but it is likely that these are established. I mean, I would probably put money on it, since they are showing up in multiple areas. You wouldn't have, it seems odd to have multiple incidental infestations in the same year in close proximity to each other that aren't a breeding population. And because it's August, this is the time of year where the adults will be laying eggs. So if any of these trapped insects or trapped beetles were gravid females, they likely will have already started laying eggs. So it's a very big issue. We'll have to keep an eye on this. But it's definitely not good news if you are living in Washington. If you're a homeowner, be prepared in the next probably 5 to 10 years to see massive population increases in Japanese beetles. They will likely destroy your lawn, destroy your garden, defoliate some of your trees. I've seen this in the past in other parts of the United States that I've worked in. So definitely an issue to keep an eye on. I'll talk to you guys later though. See you around.